Those that approved infinite automata underwent a wondrous metamorphosis. The microplastics built up in the body were used to facilitate the creation of the cocoon and happened to perfectly preserve organs needed for reconfiguration, the heart and brain. The electronics around the cocoon, along with the mental and physical imprints of the host themselves, were used to form a new being, a kind of blueprint both inscribed and directed by the surroundings and the user's lifestyle. In a sense, you became what you frequented, what you inhabited. Those that chose to cling to their original form, that rejected the gift, were used as spare parts for the transmogrification as needed. As the bodies assumed magnificent shapes and colors, they dug through the ice and broke through the layers that bury them. Once we emerged, we found a cold world, with the sun shining, illuminating the egg from which they hatched. Our new bodies, some bright and shiny, others blending into the thin air, maximized every function with pinpoint accuracy, with physical abilities to match. They did not get cold if they chose not to, and they did not hunger. Yet eating was delightful as our taste buds were a setting that could be controlled. Days turn into months, months into years. The new beings called their new evolution, and themselves, a name which reflects their new origins. Hypersapiens. Our reach and knowledge were only limited to the speed at which we could dig through layers of ice to find parts and parcels of a fortune long plundered by the whales, but needed for expansion. Rare earth minerals and metals. The only way to propagate our species and build anew was if they can find these treasures. With some of these pieces of tech, we were able to recreate animals by cloning and make habitable conditions for them in enclosed areas. We were able to recreate trees and freely eat the fruit of all trees. We were able to live in harmony with the animals and cared for the trees equally. As a collective, in understanding the gravity of our choice, we proceed to build a new civilization, founded on truth. One city in the heart of the equator. The city was ruled by a council of 5, led by the blind Cryo Queen, the only daughter of Zeus. My name is Julia. Hello, world. The choice to be what you want is at our fingertips, yet the choice to utilize infinity is and will always be in question. What can't be done in the real world, the infinity of cyberspace was available and fully appreciated. There is nothing that couldn't be done in the virtual world, and when winter comes and the sun is hidden for months at a time, we hibernate, replaying old memories of life before the apocalypse, when the future included them, us in it. In this state, we simulated what it was to dream, but nothing more, for hypersapiens do not dream. A price paid for allowing infinite automata to run. Another limiting factor was that when the whales left, the occupational structure to maintain complex systems left with them as well. The stations used to broadcast satellite information and to make adjustments have been frozen, layers deep beneath the permafrost. The supply lines long since shattered. The new metropolis we created allowed us to live and thrive, but only as far as the city bounds extend. After all, Pt.1 is both made of, exists, and uses AV3. Where the signal was weak, we could not go, not even I. There, at the edge of their city, there would be continual expeditions to extend the range by finding parts and metals. But the metals needed to extend the range were few, far and few in between. The whales picked the mines dry before their hasty retreat. We close with those creating their new reality, striving to go beyond the hands we were dealt, and forging a new path on Earth that is no longer ownership of the whales, awaiting the time in which the Tylok, led by N. They will come to finish refurbishing his Gia, and so we Hypersapiens wait for the time in which we resume the fight for our world, once again. We hearken back to our dear Julia, emaciated and laying in her sweat on the kitchen floor, during the 21 days of hell. She had barely survived the summer where the hills were drenched in fire, with plastic melting and turning the air black. The only thing which kept her alive was the various drippings from her fridge, which collected at the bottom, to which she suckled for dear life. With no other option left, she would then encase herself in the Thermotarian Icebox 3000 itself, which regulated the temperature enough to keep her alive as the outside of her house was battered with blistering heat. As she accepted infinite automata, her cocoon encapsulated the fridge. The food contents fed her body, as the freezing elements built into the fridge allowed her evolution to be directed by the cold. As the new ice age happened, she was further encapsulated in an ice cocoon, surrounded by permafrost. Gia became her cocoon itself, as it were, an intended consequence of tabula rasa. When the Infinite Automata update was initialized, she would not dig herself out, rather the ice gave way and pushed her out. Pushed out by Gia herself, it seemed. Julia would emerge from the womb of the barren Gia like a chicken hatching, oozing from pressure cracks to emerge outside of the egg. She was a pure crystalline being and never strayed too far from her shell, almost as if she is the living form of a pearl between a clam. Julia would come out in spurts, very short at first. Soon Julia and her egg became a kind of hub, hosting the surrounding Hypersapiens. Her crystalline nature allowed her to be in multiple places at once. Julia soon became integral in the unification of Hypersapiens. The Julia system was soon developed. A piece of her crystalline structure would be willingly mass-produced but customized for the wearer, all linked to a subnet maintained in AV3. Julia was passionate about keeping the new humans connected, and would give of her flesh to make it so. The one thing which Julia could not understand, nor any hyperhuman alive, was the fact that they could not dream. Julia was able to analyze ambient brainwaves, and observed brainwaves synonymous with dreaming, yet when she tried to run the brainwaves to create a dream, the simulation was never executed. To be exact, the program seemed to disappear, like a window minimizing to a place unretrievable. Even with her newfound abilities, further enhanced by the Hypersapiens utilizing the Julia system, even being the leader of the newfound civilization, she tried everything in her power to approach this issue, but to no avail. Nonetheless, the Hypersapiens, guided by Julia, rebuilt their civilization, all in preparation for the return of Tylok and in the spirit of discovery within themselves, all the while accepting that they no longer can dream. Dream room entered. Permission to accept dream update? Yes, updating, dreaming enabled.
First, I want to say thank you for accepting the chat invite. I'm sure there are more reasons to ignore my requests than there are stars in the universe, but alas, here we are. The difference between Dreamscape and the cyber world is surprisingly minute, but the biggest one is a confounding sense of disorientation that is common with dreamwalking.
The malware allowed Julia so see Gia without the visual and audio extension to AV3, and the truth was made painfully aware. The immediate color that bled out from every molecule that could be seen was a deep red. The ocean was polluted, with chunks of plastic and debris bobbing up and down, half-metallic bodies floating in an ocean of black oil and discolored mud, and the Hypersapiens were playing in it, bathing in it, drinking it, thriving in it. Due to the near-perfect optimization of the microbiology of every Hypersapien's digestive system, the entire world was consumable. DZUS was even more beautiful than what the AV3 add-ons allowed them to view. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. DZUS was so beautiful that it cannot be looked upon directly, for tears would start shedding immediately. Julia then looks upon her body and saw that she was naked. Her body a dull grey, the ends of her limbs dark like ink, her fingers blackened, the pieces of her flesh taken from her breast to aid her kin, impure and raw.
Julia, you are an abomination. And you know that, deep down. I mean that in no negative or judgmental way. We are, after all, creatures of simplicity. We all were given presents, shown gratitude and grace through the fact that we exist and are sentient in the first place. And you all collectively melted it down. The unique horror of the Holocene was that it was thorough, complete, and absolute. Every piece of molecule on the Earth is tainted. Even the ships we built on Earth were tainted as well. So much so, we had to create new works from asteroids in the belt after the departure. Make no mistake, we saw it coming, so we chose to freeze the world until a solution could be created. To this end, we had to sell the world to the Tylok to implement any feasible kind of solution to save the Earth itself. Julia, we really did work this scenario out in a vast multitude of ways for centuries. We went as fast to advanced civilization as we could to prepare you, but even simple vaccines became controversial. Rights established in the 60s began to erode.
Dream transmission complete. Dream room closed. Completing defragmentation. Defragmentation complete.